I'm disappointed. I am so disappointed. You know what? Hide the advanced GG code. This is a serious thing. If I can sum up the past day with a quote from Undertale, it's, if we're really friends, you won't come back. Let's just read the docs. If I can find them.
So
All right. First doc. Preface. We, a collective group of Shayy's victims and former friends, accuse Shayy of actions including but not limited to sexual assault, sexual harassment, grooming, orbiting fans until they're of legal age, sexual coercion, and abuse. We are releasing this document because we feel that Shayy's actions pose a present and extreme safety risk to the community such that people need to be aware to protect themselves. In this document, you will find a collection of our stories, statements, supporting evidence to these accusations. Shayy himself has already admitted to the actions detailed in the testimonies from Anonymous Number 1, Azarath, Anonymous Number 3, Willie J, to the victims themselves in private. This document contains testimonies of events that have taken place as recently as the past week, and traumatic events that the victims are processing for the first time. While we recognize the importance of timeliness and have done our best to compile this document quickly, we've chosen to prioritize the safety of the victims such that they can process what was done to them without the needless cruelty of forcing them to tell their stories to us, let alone to the public, before they were ready. Frankly, even just the sheer amount of corroborating accounts that were shared with us over just the past few days made it impossible to release a statement that would be and remain sufficiently comprehensive any sooner. We hope you can understand that no amount of pressure to make a statement was going to force us to jeopardize the well-being of the victims, and that anything but the full truth would be unfairly reductive to those of us who wish to have our stories heard. We are not a professional PR firm. We are a group of people who have been deeply hurt, taken advantage of, abused, and betrayed. We are people with private lives that now have to contend with sharing our negative experiences out to the public because Shayy's inappropriate patterns of behavior have continued and worsened far beyond what constitutes drama. We implore you to read this document in full and humbly ask for your patience and empathy as we bare our hearts to you. We ask that you do not attempt to contact nor harass anyone mentioned in this document regarding its contents, and that you do not attempt to identify and/or publish information that reflects the identities of the victims who have chosen to remain anonymous. Do not treat this document as an exhaustive list of all those affected. At minimum, we can confirm there are more victims that have spoken to us, but have chosen not to tell their story publicly at this time. Please respect their privacy until they wish to share, and show them grace and kindness when they do so. Thank you from all of us for reading. Additional context. People who have chosen to publish their testimonies anonymously have had arbitrary names, colors, and numbers assigned. These are consistent throughout all text and screenshots. All censors in black are censoring additional parties who are not relevant to the main testimonial. Many of these statements will mention a #trusted or #vent Discord channel. This refers to the channels in Shayy's server, Frog Family, that only those with the idiot or moderator roles have access to. The role idiot was typically given only to close friends of Shayy, or those who were close with many in the group. It is important to note that much of the behavior described in this document has been brought to Shayy's attention repeatedly as early as 2021 and as late as a week ago. This document was created after multiple attempts to get them to change with no result. Even after those affected privately reached out to bring it to Shayy's attention. The information gathered was collected in pieces from multiple people who all initially believed these were isolated incidents. It is only when those affected reached out to one another that the true scope was realized. Though this will be obvious based on the content shared here, Shayy has had no part in writing this document and has not seen the vast majority of its content prior to it being shared with the general public. Yeah, I would hope not. Star Smiley. Trigger warning. This document contains description of sexual assault. Hi, I'm Star Smiley, and for those who don't know, I've been Shayy's partner for the last 5 to 6 years. I've been living with them since August 2025. Then the last week have moved back to my parents. I'm going to outline the experiences I had during this relationship, starting with the most serious events. Most of these interactions happened in real life when it was just the two of us. There is an important part of this relationship you need to understand going into all of this. I identify as asexual, and I am not interested in doing anything sexual with anyone. Shayy was aware of this, and generally respected that throughout the relationship. I understood that they needed a sexual outlet and agreed that they could have sexual contact with others. I did not request that they tell me who it was with, or when it happened, but I will go into how it was handled poorly. The beginning of November 2025, at the beginning of this month, Shayy and I were lounging on our bed in the main bedroom. We started cuddling. Suddenly they laid a hand on my crotch and started rubbing it without asking. This has never happened before, and I froze. They did it for a minute or so before saying, "So you really don't feel anything, huh? That's crazy," before laughing and pulling away. This is hard to read, chat. I did not give consent for them to do this, which makes it sexual assault. I'm also asexual, and I felt disrespected in my identity that they felt they had to test whether I was asexual or not. As I mentioned previously, I agreed that they could have sexual contact with others, and did not specify that they had to tell me when it happened or who it was with. I did not expect them to be having this behavior with nearly 20 people nearly constantly throughout the entire relationship. Furthermore, they have reassured others that they did in fact ask for my permission for those specific encounters to happen, which they did not. They were going off the original agreement, which was years old at this point. These people were led to believe Shayy was telling me about this when it happened, and have said they would not have participated if they knew I didn't know. They would also intentionally invite people over while I was away from the house for the purpose of acting sexually with them, and again, not telling me what happened while I was away. I want to note that when I left the house with Shayy to go back to my parents, I did so in secret. I was afraid they would try to prevent me from leaving. They later called my mom and confirmed that they would have tried to stop me from leaving if they knew. Last bit for this section is that we actually broke up in April 2021. They were flirting with two of my friends, and as good friends, they came to me and told me. Shayy promptly broke up with me and got with another person, which lasted for a few months before coming back and saying they wanted to try a relationship again. That should have been my first red flag. The rest of this document is relatively minor in comparison to these instances, but I believe it was important to share to highlight the entirety of our relationship. For our financial situation, they made about $250,000 per year, while I made about $38K. Despite this, they would routinely ask me to foot the bill for our GDQ trips, which was about $1,500 for the hotel room for the week. Only once or twice did they ever split the bill with me for the past 5 years. Another important aspect of our relationship is that I'm severely depressed and struggle with suicidal thoughts. I feel you there. I would often vent on my alt account about these thoughts. Shayy usually never reached out to me regarding these instances privately, and rarely commented on these posts. I do not know if they just did not see them or were actively avoiding addressing them. You may ask why I didn't vent to Shayy directly, but as part of my depression, I struggled with reaching out to people one-on-one about these issues, not wanting to feel like a burden. The lack of care shown did not help. During GDQs, we would also rarely see each other except when we slept. We would occasionally hang out or have meals together, but it wasn't common. Something noteworthy is that while we were hanging out alone, they would suddenly go, I'm going to hang out with X, see you later, without inviting me. I'd understand if I didn't know the person, but this was usually with mutual friend groups, who I'd ask an hour later if I can join them. There were times I'd go to sleep not knowing where they were or who they were with. As far as our living situation went, issues arose almost immediately. I quickly became the person to do everything around the house. Laundry, grocery shopping, taking care of the garbage, dishwashing, and general cleaning. The only thing they did themselves was vacuuming, which was only once during the entire 2.5 months I was there. During the times we ate together, we usually did not talk. They were too busy on their phone. I chalked it up to being an extremely busy person. But considering how often they were interacting sexually with people, chances are higher that they were doing that instead. I should note that they seem to have a severe social media addiction. They were constantly on their phone or computer. I remember a few instances of them asking about eating, and then they'd stay glued to their phone for 2 hours. I'd remind them a few times about getting food just to get a yeah 1 second and another half hour of scrolling. After we ate, they generally went to their office, even if they were not streaming that day, until 2 a.m. They would come to bed and generally immediately get on their laptop to continue scrolling before going to sleep. It's very rare that we actually interacted with each other throughout the day. Another minor thing I want to note is that they left their trash lying around. Fucking Asmongold. It's the anti-Asmongold. Like, it's the leftist Asmongold. God, I shouldn't be making jokes about. Another minor thing I want to know is that they left their trash lying around. There would be up to 10 empty cans of soda sitting on the counter along with boxes of empty soda containers. I cleaned it up myself since it bothered me. They would also tend to leave glasses and silverware sitting around despite us having a dishwasher. The glasses would be covering the counter and sink. When I would go away and come back after a few days, there was usually silverware with crusted food sitting in the sink. I had to be the one to put it in the dishwasher despite never actually using one before. I originally cleaned them by hand before learning how to use it. The last thing I want to mention is related to financial decisions. I have a 2011 Sentra, and they had a 3-year-old Camaro. Despite this, they traded in the Camaro and then spent $100,000 on a Corvette. I recently got into an accident and busted the front of my car. They stated that they wanted to wait on getting me a new car since they just bought their Corvette. On top of this, it appears that they were regularly helping our friends out financially, such as flying them to GDQ, helping with groceries, etc. While I'm glad they did, it's notable that they usually did not offer to help me in any way with my finances, especially in the case of the car, which had obvious damage and was potentially a danger to drive. It shows a consistent pattern of behavior that routinely disrespects and invalidates me. I thought some of this behavior as endearing through rose-tinted glasses, but putting all of this together and hearing about the experiences of my friends, I can no longer turn a blind eye to the fact that they did not seem to care about me in the same way that I did them. I want to note that I do not blame any of my friends for participating in what was essentially them cheating on me. They had no idea that I didn't know what was going on, assuming or being reassured that I knew and approved of it. I will admit, because of this in the previous breakup, I had a strong fear that they would leave me. I loved them dearly and did not know what I would do if they left me. I lived with them, after all. I assumed a lot of it was based on me being insecure rather than problems they were causing, and forced myself to accept these aspects and behaviors from them. That is why I did not say anything or stand up for myself, although I really should have. All of this is very complicated for me. As I'm writing this, I'm still not sure the situation is fully set in for me. Someone I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with is suddenly revealed to be doing terrible things to the people I love. I do hope Shayy is able to take a step back from everything and improve their behaviors and how they view the people around them. Part of me still loves them. Oh God, that's sad. However, there are clear patterns of behavior that are unacceptable with how they treated people. I hope they can get better, but I hope they do it away from me and my friends for everyone's safety. You're a better person than me, star smiley. You're a better person than me because if I said what I wanted to happen to them, I would get banned. I'm so fucking disappointed in them. Aspen. Timestamps are in GMT. Okay. I am Aspen/Aspenect. I was friends with Shayy for a few years starting in early 2022. We originally started talking in Twitter DMs, which have, for better or worse, been lost to time since I deactivated my Twitter account a year or two ago at this point. To contextualize my age throughout the rest of this document, I was born late November 2004, so I was a few months into being 17 at this point. And then Shayy with a waving hand emoji and Aspen going OMG hi, :3. Cute little emote of Madeline and Badlin hugging. Other upside to Discord, I use emotes way too much and Twitter doesn't allow that. At the time, I was significantly less experienced with dealing with my anxiety and struggled with my mental health, and at the time, Shayy was one of the people that I would talk to about these things. At this time, they were very willing to converse and support me, talking me through a breakdown on multiple different occasions. Times I would give compliments, calling them cute primarily, but things in that vein. They reciprocated these thoughts in a way that was, in hindsight, not appropriate given my age, 17, and theirs, 22 or 23. God damn it. Key smash. Fun fact, you're cute. Smiley face takes one to no one. Just lose a shot. No, I don't think I will. You bitch. I hope you're having a good night. I'll So I'm a very complimentary person, so prepare yourself. That is just really creepy given the context. Bunch of commas. The real kicker of this conversation is when I was talking about worrying about not passing while wearing a dress. And they took what was meant to be a comment about how I was insecure about my shoulders to be about my gawk, entirely unprompted. Oh. Later in the same conversation, they commented on my NFTs, which, as far as myself or anyone else can figure out, is nice fucking tits. That I look cute and that my then partner is VVV lucky. To a certain extent, you could argue this is reassurance, but the comments about my penis and breasts were unsavory at best. All right. I'm not gonna read what Shayy is saying here. They're, oh my god. Nothing direct in here, but a couple instances of them being a bit too concerned about being canceled in a way that seems to be foreshadowing something. Additionally, very clear early on that they were willing to objectify their friends and fans so far as to say they revel in their simps. On June 16th, during SGDQ, which we were both attending, they sent a suggestive image of them shirtless. To the best of my ability to discern the context, this was while we were sitting on a bed next to each other in the same room IRL. But regardless of context, weird thing to send a 17-year-old, yeah. Image not attached to, for privacy reasons and for your sake, reading this. There was no context to this being sent. It was in the middle of a series of messages that were just spamming funny Discord stickers at each other. As I approached 18 years old, they started complimenting me and calling me cute more and more. Worst of this was on Snapchat, which I unfortunately can't supply more than this screenshot I had in my camera roll, because I don't have Snapchat anymore. But these are all as I was approaching 18 years old at the end of November. After I turned 18, their demeanor toward me immediately changed to be significantly more overtly flirtatious. Additionally, in the same conversation, they accepted my advancement to talking about kissing platonically. But more importantly, this was the first time we talked about Star's, Star Smiley, their them partner, Star's boundaries about flirting with and being sexual with other people. They were, for several years, in a monogamous relationship in which they stated that Star said she was okay with them to engage in these relations with other people, but she later clarified they never communicated properly about this. Well, yeah, no, I asked her about it, of course. Fucking liar. There are numerous flirtatious conversations, like above, from shortly after I turned 18 that I will skip over for brevity. I'll note here that starting here, late 2023, until around October of 2025, they only reached out or engaged in conversations with me when they were horny. Fucking course they did. Every other conversation is dry at best, or in some cases just didn't even get a reply. This isn't a pattern that I noticed until the events at SGDQ 2025 that I will cover later, but it's worth noting. On one occasion, while we were talking, they told me to come lay on their lap, and given my exhaustion at the time, I said I would probably fall asleep. They made a comment about hoping I don't do anything silly while I slept. I can't think of any way to read this other than as a threat. Later in the same conversation, I established that I was feeling sex repulse, and that's why I was deflecting their advances, and expressed worry for Star's boundaries, to which they reassured me that it was okay. I was very clear how important communication about things like this was for me. When I expressed discomfort that they were posting suggestive/nude images untagged on their private Twitter account, they responded worried about the reach of their posts, again on a private account, and rather suggested that they remove me from the circle. I was clear that I used my private Twitter account to follow my friends' accounts and that seeing sexual things was by far the outlier, and they still pushed that I should just be removed or that I should make a separate account for that, to which I did, despite not really wanting to do that given my asexuality. I'm not reading the messages, not out loud. It's disgusting. They also proceeded to say I was being condescending for this concern, citing their experience with content creation as if that excuses it. What? Oh my god, Hold on. Alright, I'm back. In this conversation, they were making more advances than I was comfortable with, and I tried diverting the conversation and diffusing it, but they kept pushing their sexual fantasies on me in the moment. A decent portion of our conversations during this time, 2023 to 2025, were somewhat similar to this, with me eventually giving in to their pressure. I will not continue posting more screenshots of conversations like this, but it is a couple thousand messages over dozens of conversations. At SGDQ 2024, they were interested in hanging out with me, with many DMs like the ones below wanting to hang out. We cuddled while there were a number of people in the room, including but not limited to Star being in the bed at the same time. Given the context of what happened in this same situation when I was alone with Shayy the next year, I wholeheartedly believe their presence saved me from being assaulted here. We did the same later that day, and I similarly suspect that the constant presence of other people in the room was the only thing saving me. Foreshadowing a similar way they treated me at the next GDQ, they did not talk with me or respond to any of my DMs that were not related to me coming and hanging out with them in person. In this conversation, I explicitly told them I wasn't horny, and they still tried to make an advancement. And for the main event, SGDQ 2025. They seemed excited to see me in anticipation, and I was excited to see them. They continued to try to get me to come hang out, all the while I was unaware it would be one-on-one. I assumed that friends, or at least Star, would be around in their room. What I did not know at the time was that they did this purely with the intent of having sex with me. When I went up to their room under the pretense of hanging out, they sexually assaulted me. They made advancements and pushed me to do things I was not comfortable with, but I did not feel safe saying no, given the context, the power they had over me, and the fact that I was alone with them. At the time, I was vulnerable given unrelated things in my personal life, and it led me to not really realize what had happened until I looked back on it a few days later. For the rest of the event, they barely responded to me. I sent around a dozen messages. They gave one single :3 and an LOL, ignoring almost everything I said to them, all the while acting like nothing happened when we were around each other in person. The next time they messaged me was to bring up what happened in person again. And while I tried deflecting, they were insistent on it. I was incredibly uncomfortable around them at the time and left it at saying I wasn't interested and that I was feeling sex repulsed. I was in a particularly deep sex repulsion bout that was caused by what happened at GDQ. Later in that conversation, they tried prompting me about AGDQ. Around this time, we started having actual conversations occasionally, which I can only suspect was because around this time, people were starting to come out privately with stories about Shayy that they became aware of. Eventually, I reached out about my experience with them, after I had already shared my part of the story with relevant people. I hoped at the time that this was them genuinely making an effort to make good on their mistakes and be a better friend. But now I know that it was simply them trying to cover their tracks and save face. Their apology seemed genuine, and I bet. In the month or so following, there were a few conversations we had that felt real for the first time in years. Even them reaching out after I'd posted on my private Twitter during a breakdown. But in the past few days, while learning about others' stories and the recency with which they were continuing to abuse and take advantage of people, it was clear that this was never anything more than an attempt to save face. Shayy, if you're reading this, and I sure hope you are, you repeatedly pushed me to my limits, and you broke me down into nothing while I trusted you and forgave you over and over, time and time again. You took my endless kindness and used it to take advantage of me and my friends. You and your actions are deplorable, and I hope you never show your face around here ever again, because you will never be welcome back. That's a closing statement I agree with more than Stars. Sorry. It's just, I am so disappointed in them right now. Anonymous 1. Okay. Hey, Anonymous 1 here. Hold on. This is a complete reaccounting of what exactly went on between me and Shayy and the direct fallout for the people unaware. A sexual joke targeted towards me over a tweet unrelated to you, which I only sent because I felt like I had to prove I wasn't a bottom after you teased that I was one, about me giving you a hickey. That is the truth. It was not, God, I wish that were me. It was, when am I getting this? You have my permission to tell them. I know you name dropped me anyway, so go ahead. It's embarrassing for me, but they deserve to know the truth. If you want to be truly accountable, you will also know that this isn't the first time you've been told not to make intimate comments or jokes, or to not act like you do with people in private. You'll do that if you want to be better, because the first step to improving is to admit the truth. It will have consequences, but that's the first step. That's what taking accountability is, Shayy. Your friends who are still with you will make sure it doesn't happen again. If you really want to, you can even use screenshots. Show them what happened if you really have the balls to. Hell, show them the full thing. Show them our confrontation if you want. You have my full consent. I have nothing to hide, and I'm ready for the consequences of how embarrassing and painful those exchanges are to read for me. Hey, Anonymous One here. Sorry if it has come to this for the people who are most likely sick of hearing about everything relating to this situation. Ideally, Shay's accountability statement would have been the last time you guys would have to hear about it, but Shayy continues to not properly explain what happened, and now I'm here having to do it myself. This feels wretched, and I am afraid. Before I begin, I do want to just explain a little where my head is at with all this. Firstly, please make sure you are going back to both the videos and the screenshots and cross-referencing as evidence. I do not expect you to take my word, so please make sure you are evaluating the conversations themselves to ensure you know what is happening in full. I mean, you don't have to do it, but it's probably best you do, lol. Secondly, please be aware that my intent isn't to drive Shay's friends away with this. I am fully aware and already know of people who know of the situation in full and are continuing to stick by them, and that is okay. I have said this to every single person that I've told, but I beg of you that if you stay, that you make sure this never happens again. Please take everything I say as an example of what to look out for and what to call out. Do not let Shayy do this again to anyone. The part above is kind of redundant now, considering the scope of Shay's actions. A lot of people have fully cut contact. I wish it didn't have to be this way, and I'm sorry. Don't fucking apologize. You did nothing wrong, Anonymous Number One. Do not feel forced to stay, though. Please prioritize your own feelings and think for yourself in this situation. I do not blame you whatsoever if this makes you feel violently uncomfortable. I would also like to make it completely clear, this is my own experience, and any mention of others' experiences in any detail will be limited as much as possible. However, please keep it in mind, countless people had their own experiences, whether big or small. If they wish to use this as a jumping off point to talk about their own, they're 100% welcome to. And then an addendum just saying, don't be a bigot. Shayy did not do this because they have autism or they're part of the LGBTQ plus community. It is because they are a bad person. Originally was going to wait until later to explain how this entire situation has made me feel. But since starting this document, I've had a second mental health crisis moment that was greatly attributed to this entire fiasco. I've had 2 fits of hyperventilation, 3 now as of November 16th, since Shayy released their most recent statement. currently writing this on November 6th, 2025. So it has been 2 days. I actually woke up to that statement being posted in the early hours of the 5th with no warning. Okay. So, Anonymous is just saying, like, hey, this was really fucking traumatic. And I'm proud of myself for still being here. Me and Shayy became friends as a result of me being an active member in their community, as a fan, most prominently during 2023. They messaged me for the first time directly on March 11th, 2023, to thank me for the art I made for them. I was 17 years old. We quickly grew a friendship through interactions both in DMs and in Gen Chat, as well as through the fact that I was making fan art for them every so often. I was added to Trusted on the 27th of June 2023, a bit under a month before I turned 18. Shayy behaved properly while I was underage as far as I'm aware. But soon after turning 18, my birthday being August 15th, which they in DMs wished me happy birthday and joked about minors DNI in bio for, was when they began to use terms like good boy to describe and praise me. Shayy was 24. It was on New Year's Eve of 2023. '31st of December. After I'd vented to Shayy about me and my mother's relationship and how troubled said relationship was, that Shayy suddenly started speaking to me about their ass. What? Their message was in direct relation to me offering to listen to them vent. And they proceeded to send a screenshot, someone's Twitter header. This header consisted of Shay's GDQ bed ass picture. They told me, quote, I used my platform to force my friend to make this her banner for the entire year. I started to respond to this playfully, saying dumb shit like, goddamn, you got dumpy. I was aware this was stupid to say. It's not really something I like to joke about often, but it felt right in the moment given how playful Shayy could be. I wanted to be friends with them, and so I wanted to match the energy. This, though, ended up with Shayy saying, are you saying you want to have a fat ass? And my response of, that implies I don't have a fat ass already. This is where proof was asked by Shayy. I don't know why Shayy focused on the nickname name ass for this segment. For those unaware, name ass was a nickname I gave myself in Shay's sub-only Minecraft server, using a sign next to my bed in game. I'd tell my friends at the time, people I'd known for longer than Shayy and could testify themselves, not to call me that name as part of the joke. It was always don't call me name ass in 2023, and I know that for certain. I must note, however, that in recent years, I definitely started joking more openly about the name. Now, I cannot prove myself that this conversation didn't happen in 2023. It's extremely hard to prove a negative. But if it did happen, then the most likely reason Shayy could not find evidence for it is that it either happened in a voice call or in Twitch chat. I implore Shayy to search the Frog family Discord for the word name ass, find if they believe it to be true that it happened in a public chat. Once again, completely possible that it happened offhandedly in a Twitch chat or a VC. But considering context, quite strange that it would be the focus point Shayy used instead of the actual reason the conversation started. Shayy goaded the conversation after I explained, and they joked about my body. This went on until I finally said that I did have a photo that could show what I meant by using the angle it was taken from. This image was of me in my Omori hoodie, something I had posted elsewhere. I think I actually posted it in Frog Family's photo channel. They didn't know this yet, though, and I gave them an out since I was confused and unsure on if I should actually post the image or not. Deep down, I wanted them to tell me not to, so I didn't have to. I'd even asked my own mother what I should do in this situation when I'm unsure about sending something with this context around it. She didn't encourage me not to. God, what a shitty fucking mom. So I felt like I had to. I wanted Shayy to like me and I wanted them to be happy, so when they saw my hesitance responding to my butt with a "but what," I felt even more inclined to send it. They're lucky I didn't send anything sexually suggestive. They were completely irresponsible. I was young. It was 4 months after I had turned 18. To add salt to the wound, they blamed me for the conversation even starting. I called this out as projection jokingly because to some extent I think it was. They teased me asking me what I was going to do about it. I joked about chasing them around at GDQ someday, something I found funny to do with my tall friends. Picturing a person chasing someone tall down a hallway sounds stupid as hell. They told me they would hug me and pick me up. That was one of the many exceptions I made for Shayy. Usually these things included more intimate or affectionate things like calling me cute. I hated anyone calling me this, but I made exceptions for them specifically. It made me feel special. Sorry. It made me feel special. I felt important to them. Same goes for being picked up. I have openly discussed before how I would hate the idea of being picked up. Something people used to do without my consent throughout my childhood because of my height, which resulted in me being spun around and tossed like a doll. But it's entirely possible Shayy didn't see it. It's the least of my concerns nonetheless. But I thought it would be important to note my own pattern of allowing Shayy to do things I wouldn't allow others to do. I drew art for them for free when they asked, which they made into their profile picture for the month of October 2024. During a time where I had halted drawing for people when they asked, even when payment was given. Another example of an exception I made for them. I finished it the same day. Shayy actually wasn't the nicest to me about the artwork, but apologized the next day after I confronted them about how it hurt my feelings. Power imbalance played big on my reactions to Shayy doing these things. I was more hesitant to say no, to upset, to confront. These are all things I have always struggled to put boundaries up for most of my life. Shayy has always been in the back of my mind when making decisions relating to them. I felt I owed it to them with how often they told me how close we were and how much they trusted me. It was something they told me a lot, enough for it to be something I remember so much. This was not the only time Shayy made this exact proof joke to me in relation to seeing my ass. Early hours of March 27th, 2024. Stardew Valley on their Shayy 2 account. Why was I afraid to speak up about Shayy? There is a situation I will not give details about that occurred in late 2024 that involved me finding out about a dynamic between Shayy and someone else that was sexual in nature. That person, victim 7, came to me in confidence about their feelings. And because of the guilt of keeping my knowledge of it from Shayy and my wanting to help in sorting the situation out as someone who cared about the both of them as friends, I told them what I knew. The reason I specifically bring this up is because Shay's reaction to me knowing about this information was one of the big reasons I was so terrified to confide in anyone about our own interactions, both in the past and present. They repeated to me that the interactions they had were personal and private, cited how it would have made me uncomfortable to read them because I'm Arrow Ace, so that it made them uncomfortable that the person in question came to me because they knew I was close with without their consent, instead of talking to other people. She had a pretty large paranoia and trauma over people talking behind their back / vague posting. Expressed this to me multiple times during our friendship. When I was vague about things that were bothering me to them, they would pry and try to get it out of me. Shayy made it a point to tell me multiple times that I would scare them with my vagueness, asking if it was ever about them. Sometimes I didn't want to particularly want to tell Shayy how I was feeling or what was bothering me, but I always found myself doing it when they pried. I couldn't bring myself to tell them no. It felt bad to tell them no. This also obviously didn't help with what I said previously about my fear of telling other people the shitty things they had done to me. They had trauma about their friends going behind their back. If I confided in people in private about how uncomfortable they made me feel. I would be triggering their trauma if they ever found out. It was an unsettling and guilt-ridden feeling. I told myself multiple times when bad things happened that I wouldn't tell anyone. That maybe I'd have to take this shit to the grave with me. I wanted to be loyal and a good friend. And honestly, this entire situation has made me feel like the worst person alive because of this. In the present, I can safely say I have carried guilt for months. I feel like a fucking monster, especially now that this is going public. That paragraph, that one hit me. This whole situation is bad, but this paragraph really hit me. Shayy and other people's hair. Okay, so she has a thing for longer hair and was manipulative about that. Did anything weird ever happen in trusted chat? I'm sure you could find the odd examples of Shayy misbehaving and being sexual in trusted chat. I think everyone is guilty of having those moments despite the fact that we had children there. I'm going to mention this specific instance though, because I remember it extremely clearly and have the evidence to prove it happened. September 6th, 2024, conversation was had about masturbation in the vent channel. Me and others were participants in this conversation, which I'm aware I shouldn't have been partaking in either. But someone who also was a participant was Shayy. What's worse is that there is proof that 2 minors saw these messages and were present lurking. Both of them were 17. I have to ask, how the actual fuck was this allowed? And why the fuck did nobody stop this conversation? This shit should never have been normalized, and I'm sickened with myself for not putting a stop to it. I had a feeling it was wrong, but went along with it because everyone else seemed fine with it, especially the server owner and main figure, Shayy. Alright, what sparked this? Xander? Hello bottoms in my phone. Hello bottoms in my iPhone message as so for the obvious reason that I did not identify with the label bottom. I've never personally jived with the idea of being labeled as such, and it is something that Shayy has tried to playfully argue I am since we became friends. They even once teased that I was becoming like Redacted One, who regularly got called a bottom. It's like they so badly wanted me to be someone that I'm not. That always made me feel somewhat uncomfortable. Tried my best to push against this when I could. The idea of being a bottom makes me feel afraid of being taken advantage of within the context of sex positions. Reasons are very personal to me because of my sexual trauma and how I've been treated my entire life. Alright, back to the timeline of events. Time is 9:08 p.m. I took this screen cap to the DMs with Shayy to show them proof. Funny how this is the third time we're doing the proof bit, huh? Because I trusted them. They responded shyly and teasing with, hey, :3, which is a signature for them when they're trying to imply something involving them. I instantly knew what they meant by this, but I hoped I was just making things up. I didn't want to assume Shayy wanted me to give them a hickey. It made me revolt at the thought. It disgusted me. I don't want sexual interactions with Shayy. Why would they say that? Maybe I'm just overthinking it. So I took it as a joke. I teased them. I called them a slur that we all reclaimed teasingly in this group of friends. I joked that they probably liked it knowing them, because I'd seen their reaction to being called that before. They seemingly responded seriously, worsening the feeling. But I tried to keep it light and playful as much as I could. We spoke for a couple more messages before the conversation dropped off at 9:56 p.m. Shayy messages me again at midnight, responding to what I said hours prior, randomly, to elaborate and share a photo of themselves alongside it. So the conversation reignites. I call them pretty. They respond positively using the blushing emoji they use constantly. I send a patting gift. We regularly exchange for platonic nice reasons. This is something I usually did with emojis, but we did it with gifts. This was normal. Then Shayy responds, please. Nine minutes later, 3 whole hours after I had sent that screen cap, Shayy responds to it with, so when am I getting this though? With a little tongue sticking out emoticon. God damn it. I have to make this text big so I can get it through everyone's heads what was actually said. Shayy, for whatever reason, continues to say this was a God-eye situation. It wasn't. Never was, and I don't know why they continue to make it out like it was. If you check the videos that should have been posted the other night, you can see for yourself that the attachment links the links to the Hickey tweet. If they weren't posted, I'll make sure they are actually posted this time, like I wanted it originally. I'm saying this now so I don't forget later. But Shayy has actively lied about this situation to other people before making any of the accountability posts. They were callous in how they talked about it, like it was clownable. Luckily, the person this was sent to knew better than to trust what Shayy was saying, but who knows what else they said this to, who else they said this to behind closed doors. The implication is that they told multiple people based on them saying basically everyone I've spoken to. The most recent accountability post also lied about it too. Why are you incapable of speaking the truth? To directly quote, it was pretty explicitly written as, God, I need this. Was it really now? I don't know, it seems to me like you were expecting me to give you a hickey. Funny joke you got there. I laughed so hard. Honestly, it sounds more like a demand to me than a joke. Sorry, I'm getting carried away and speaking directly to Shayy instead of you all. My apologies, it's the only way I can really express this now without speaking to them directly. I don't really want to do that after the last 2 confrontations we had. I'll speak on that later. Shayy doubled down twice, took none of the opportunities to shut down the joke they made. Sexual and platonic interactions aren't terribly different to Shayy. It made me rethink every single interaction we had once months had passed. How much of what we said, what we did, was being taken sexually? If sexual and platonic aren't distant, what was our platonic friendship? Unsure if I was Arrow Ace. Acting like they were unsure if I was Arrow Ace. Back when I told them I knew information about their situation with another friend, they cited me being Ace as a reason why it might be uncomfortable for me to learn about their sexual dynamic. So why is there such hesitance now? Is it because they potentially saw me expressing that I was unsure if I was Arrow Ace once in the vent channel? Because I was trying to figure out what was going on with my sexuality? That's speculation on my part. If that's the case, but if that is the case, then why the actual fuck would you take advantage of that? Every outcome, in my opinion, as to why Shayy would do this all lead to Shayy not acting appropriately. They pushed against a boundary, pushed the limits of our friendship, and tested the waters to see if something stuck. How did I find out other people went through this too? I hope you don't mind that I start this with some of our last interactions for context. I ended up venting to Shayy about my feelings about Trusted. I didn't feel like I belonged. I I blamed myself for not enjoying the sexual conversations and vulgarity. I was also having family issues around the same time, so I was extremely broken up. This was the last conversation that me and Shayy had that felt meaningful and personal, and where I felt comfortable to vent to them. It took place on the 28th of July, 2025. Let's see. This spooks me, now knowing what went on with some of their friends that they saw in person. This included, but is not limited to, Shayy groping Audrey's ass at SGDQ 2024 and cuddling Anonymous number 3 to the point where he could feel Shay's... I'm not reading that out loud. At AGDQ 2025. Conversation dropped off at 9:24 a.m. Let's see. As a result of me, let's see. We all started to notice a very prevalent pattern. Okay, this is... I'm interested. I'm curious. We were being playfully flirted with, advances made on us, sexual acts exchanged which were mostly instigated by Shayy. Some were young but of age when it happened. The majority of us are feminine, often assigned female at birth. Some of us are vulnerable and not appropriate to be initiating flirtatious or sexual conversation / acts with. Again, I'm Arrow Ace. I was unavailable. Alright. That was not their place to mention at all. Yeah. After I sent this message, I blocked Shayy like I had warned them. Okay, so being very manipulative. For the record, you'll probably notice that I completely failed to mention what had happened on New Year's of 2023. You might be wondering why I never brought that up. To put it simply, I was already getting grilled for bringing up Shay's actions from months ago, let alone years ago. I knew I was already going to face consequences for bringing up the more recent incident, so I left the other out entirely. Shouldn't have left it out in hindsight, but at the moment I was so goddamn afraid of what the response would be already that I wanted to limit how much it would hurt as much as possible for my own sake. This is... Shayy then mentioned someone joking about a Google Doc to my face. Which, painful irony, I know. Feels like they were taunting me with a reminder of their trauma, but this time about this situation getting out to the public. They continued nonetheless, telling me about how afraid they were of their life being ruined by falsehoods. I'm not going to deny Shayy has serious trauma involving the idea of being canceled or publicly called out. That would be stupid. They're a content creator and it happens all the time to others, whether it's false or not. But they definitely weaponized this trauma against me, whether they intended to or not. To talk about being called out in public during a conversation I was having with them in private, whilst I was coming to express my discomfort and concern over the fact that Shayy did this thing to me, was wildly inappropriate. I think Shayy is extremely aware of that now. It's clearly checked out, but Shayy continues making it about them. Self-explanatory. Then they start to therapize me again. Giving me unsolicited advice with someone older. I don't know how else to describe this other than embarrassing. Does that mean to say? Probably, but it is just so genuinely tone deaf. I did not want advice off of the person who had talked to me terribly just 20 minutes prior. It felt wrong, so I told them I wanted space now. Sadly, we're not done with this section yet, though. Shayy respected my wishes, yet asked me to keep them unblocked. This is genuinely inexcusable, and I should have told them no. To guilt me into keeping access to open to direct contact after getting me to talk to them about something I wasn't ready to because they don't want to be in isolation is genuinely extremely selfish, terrible behavior. My feelings were not considered whatsoever, no matter how many times Shayy tells himself and others that they were. My feelings were genuinely considered. You wouldn't have asked. You wouldn't have minimized your mistake. You wouldn't have spoken when I told you I didn't want to talk. Shay's ideas of consideration and care for me were surface level. I don't care that they gave me the choice. They shouldn't have asked me to keep them unblocked in the first place. After they told me they were trying to get better at what was essentially understanding and respecting people's boundaries, they asked to lift my own boundary for their own benefit, blocking them. And I said it was okay because I was an idiot. How much longer is this doc? Holy shit. I don't know if I can read any more than this. I'm just disgusted with Shay's actions. We'll continue this another time. I need some fucking sleep.